Hey, sleepyhead. You better wake up before your hunt gets away.
I hunted your heart years ago.
Yes, you did, silly boy. But you need to wake up. We will be waiting for you.
No, wait! Don't go!
Matthew woke up from his dream with tears in his eyes.
I'm sorry.
He whispered, helpless to be with them any longer. The jungle was silent in the twilight. He gathered his belongings and set off toward his destination. By noon, he reached Willow Creek. Matthew stood at the edge of a hill, looking down at the small but busy town nestled between rolling hills and dense woodland. The overcast sky loomed heavy, thick grey clouds stretching endlessly, casting a dull, lifeless light over the landscape. A light mist clung to the ground, softening the outlines of wooden buildings in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys, blending into the low-hanging clouds. The dirt road leading into town was damp from the night's rain, lined with wooden fences and scattered carts as early traders set up their goods. Matthew entered Willow Creek, walking slowly and scanning the people around him. Rich merchants, dressed in shiny silk clothing, haggled over prices. Beggars sat motionless in dark alleys, their arms raised above them like statues. Children played with wooden sticks, pretending to be knights, lost in their own fantasies. Nearby, working ladies tried to seduce cheerful men stumbling out of a bar.
You look lonely. Want some company?
No, I don't.
He reached an old man selling fish on his rusty wagon.
Hello, good sir. Would you like some fish for your lunch? I got them this morning.
The hunter looked at the fish. They were definitely not from this morning.
Maybe another time. You have been in this town for a long time, right? Have you heard of a man named R.B.?
The fisherman gave Matthew a long, sinister look.
I don't know. Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. Can't remember.
He was lying. Matthew noticed his hesitation and pulled out the bag of coins he had taken from the bandit camp, placing it on the old wagon.
How about now?
The fisherman looked into the bag. His eyes shined at the sight of gold.
You remembered something?
The old man smiled with pleasure and said,
Of course. How could I forget something like that? Sign of old age, I guess.
Sure. Now tell me about R.B. What do you know about him?
Matthew's patience was running low. The fisherman counted his coins, pretending Matthew wasn't there.
You're looking for a man named Rowan Brooks. He's a big-time trader, runs shipments between here and the capital.
He lowered his voice.
Man's got influence, deals in goods and rumors.
Where do I find him?
The merchant gestured toward the far end of town.
Check the town square. He does business there when he's in town.
Matthew stepped back, adjusting his cloak, and headed in the direction the old man had pointed. Walking in the town alleys got him thinking.
All these people, rich or poor, they are corrupted and dirty. They slit each other's throat for a bag of coins. No wonder one of them could murder an entire village.
Matthew reached the town square, a busy place filled with small shops and bustling crowds, amplifying all he had seen before. Finding someone in this dense crowd wasn't easy, so he began searching, scanning each person carefully. Then, he saw him. The man stood out like a noble among commoners. Late 50s, slightly overweight, dressed in an expensive deep red coat with gold markings. His thinning white hair was combed back. A polished silver ring gleamed on his finger as he gestured while speaking to a younger merchant. It had to be him. No one else fits the description so perfectly. Beside him stood a tall, lanky young man, no older than 18. His slightly unkempt black hair and sharp features bore a clear resemblance to Rowan. Unlike his father, his face lacked charm. His dark eyes were detached, uninterested in the world around him. There was an awkwardness in how he carried himself, as if unsure of his place. Matthew watched them carefully from the shadows, following their every move.
I should wait until he's alone. Then I'll have my answers.
By the end of the day, the merchant returned to his home, a large, well-maintained estate near the heart of Willow Creek. The second floor held his private chambers, where warm candlelight flickered behind a tall window. The overcast night sky loomed above, heavy with thick clouds, allowing no moonlight to break through. The streets below were mostly empty, save for the occasional drunken straggler or patrolling guard. Across from the estate, on the rooftop of a neighboring building, Matthew waited in the shadows, his cloak blending into the darkness. His breath was steady, his sharp eyes locked onto the second-floor window of the house. Brooks' private chamber, dimly lit by flickering candlelight. The room exudes wealth. A polished silver sword with a jeweled hilt rests on a display stand near the fireplace, its blade gleaming faintly in the low light. Stacks of parchment, ledgers, and gold-trimmed books cover a heavy oak desk. Inside, the merchant removed his red and gold coat, draping it over a chair. He poured himself a glass of wine, his movements slow as if unwinding from a long day of deceit. His expression was calm. A man who did not know death was watching him. After some time, Rowan's son entered the room. Their conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument. With no resolution, the boy stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Rowan's face remained twisted in anger and disappointment. He tried to distract himself with the papers on his desk. His mind was buried in calculations, trade agreements, and profit. Then, a presence. He looked up and froze. Matthew stood across from him, still as stone, cloaked in shadow. His cold, sharp eyes locked onto Rowan's with a quiet, lethal intensity. His breath caught in his throat. His gaze flicked briefly to the window, open. He had never heard him enter.
Who are you?
Matthew said nothing. Rowan swallowed hard, his once confident demeanor crumbling under the weight of the hunter's silent stare.
You ordered the destruction of my village. Here's the proof.
Matthew placed the note he found in the bandit camp on the desk.
This must be a misunderstanding. Let me see this proof of yours.
Rowan tried to grab the note with his hand, but before he could blink, Matthew pulled out his knife and slammed it in Rowan's hand, nailing it to the desk.
Fuck!
Rowan gasps, his face twisted in agony. He tries to yank his arm away, but the blade keeps him trapped.
You better start talking before I lose my patience.
Matthew's cold gaze sent chills to Rowan's spine.
It was just business. I hired those men to sabotage Windhurst's lumber trade. Nothing more, just to create a shortage in the capital. They would pay triple for my wood shipments once Windhurst was gone. I never wanted anyone killed.
Matthew couldn't listen anymore.
My family is dead because you wanted to sell fucking woods?
Unimaginable fury consumes him. Before Rowan could beg for mercy, Matthew slammed his head to the desk. His face busted open, and blood and broken teeth splattered out of his mouth. Matthew raised his fist and smashed it on Rowan's head. The loud cracking sound of breaking bones filled the room. Matthew smashed it again and again. His vision became red from all the blood on his face. When he couldn't lift his arm from pain, Matthew snapped back to reality. Rowan Brooks no longer screams. What remains of his head is barely recognizable. Matthew stares down at his hands. Blood drips from his fingers, warm and sticky. His gaze falls to the bow. His stomach tightens as his eyes land on the carved inscription along the grip. Honor and salvation. The words are barely visible beneath the thick coat of blood. His father's legacy, now tainted by his uncontrollable fury. Then, He hears shouting, the stomp of boots pounding against the wooden floor. The sound is close. His instincts take over. Grabbing the silver sword from its stand, spins around and thrusts the blade forward. Rowan's young son stares down at the sword, embedded in his stomach. His hands shaking, clutches the blade as if trying to hold in the life spilling from him. His wide, dark eyes, full of fear, lock onto Matthew. His knees buckle. The boy collapses onto the blood-stained floor. Then, a single word escapes in a weak whisper.
Father.
The last breath leaves his body. His eyes remain open, but empty. Matthew stands frozen. His grip weakens. The sword slips from his fingers, landing with a metallic thud beside the boy's body. He stares downward, at the boy lying lifeless before him. The blood pools beneath him, soaking into the floorboards. Matthew's own reflection stares back at him in the crimson puddle. The realization crashes over him like a wave, cold, suffocating. He had his revenge, but
Was it worth it?